I want to welcome you to Investors Reality live from Ukraine, where hopefully the proxy war between the East and the West can come to an end. However, what is happening currently is that an imminent attack from the Russian forces targeting the complete shutdown of the Ukrainian power grid could be happening anytime now. In fact, Ukrainian authorities have shared intelligence that the probability of a major attack is currently around 90% that Russia will attack this week, warning that the Russian forces will target infrastructure related to the power grid. Now don't forget, a week ago Russia already had a major attack and already millions of Ukrainians have very limited power supply and also water. Now this 8-month-old conflict between Russia and Ukraine could come to an end. That's at least what I hope. But the infrastructure, power, transportation and water of Ukraine is being shut down. And the Russian attacks on Ukraine's ability to function have really gradually escalated, resulting in a wider and more serious damage to the civilians. Now it does seem that the Russians, they don't want to destroy everything unless the West and its puppet Ukrainian government fail to come to their senses and return to the negotiation table. Now this already long drawn out conflict itself really foolishly delayed for 8 years because Russia, the Kremlin, they have misplaced their hopes on the Minsk agreement. However, that has proven to be a strategic mistake that obviously has permitted the United States and the NATO to get involved. Sanctions that disrupted Russian businesses, and 2 new members of NATO willing to host US nuclear weapons near Russia's borders. And by many more crossings of unenforced Russian red lines, such as the execution of Russian POWs and the attacks on the Nord Stream pipelines and the Crimea bridge, has only escalated the tensions between the East and the West. Now in the recent days, the Kremlin has actually permitted the Russian armed forces limited attacks on Ukraine's electrical grid, fuel supplies, railways, and command and control centers. So by seizing Kiev's ability to wage a war against the Russian forces, the Kremlin has shown for the first time some recognition that Russia is indeed at war, and they are not conducting a police special operation only limited to the protection of the Donbass region and its residents. However, until now, Putin, he has refused to completely shut down Ukraine, which Russia easily can do. However, they didn't do that in the hope that Ukraine would return to the talks, return to peace talks. But that has not been the case until now. Until now, the Ukrainian government, they have resisted have refused to continue the negotiations. However, this could all change this week, because it certainly looks like Russia's patience is running out. Now, I hope you all understand that the Western mainstream media, they do not report the true situation of this war. So the Western media, from this point of view, is just a propaganda ministry, and they have created a picture of Russian defeat. However, I have to say it would be very difficult to identify the worst liar in the mainstream media, as there are endless news outlets that could actually fight for the first prize. But in this case, the UK's Telegraph, I think they are a leading candidate for posting the most far-fetched reports. You see, for example, this one, and I will link it below, is called Vladimir Putin's only hope now is to terrify the West into negotiating away Ukraine's victories. And the second one is called Ukraine could reach Crimea by Christmas. Now that's a Christmas joke. Now furthermore, the so-called Russian experts in the West, they're spreading the same delusions. And consequently, the Western people, the society, they have a totally false picture of the current situation. You see, Russia, they could destroy Ukraine in a day without using any nuclear weapons. However, the Kremlin's restraint might have been a strategic mistake, as it enabled the West to get involved and widen the war. So in order to end this, it looks like Russia, they would need a dramatic, quick and overwhelming victory. And only that would put the West on clear notice that Russia indeed has red lines, and that the West's refusal to accommodate Russia's security concern does have dramatic consequences. Russia, they have a number of legitimate reasons for launching their special operation. Ukraine and the population there, they have been part of Russia for centuries. There is a lot of intermarriage. And most Ukrainians are actually not favorable to the current government who have dominated Ukraine since the US overthrew the government in 2014. And the people have indeed suffered. Now, the Kremlin, they do not want to take over a poverty-affected ruin of a country on its border. And the Kremlin also doesn't want to have the responsibility for rebuilding Ukraine's infrastructure. However, from the West, if you look at this from Washington's standpoint, the more Ukraine is destroyed, the better. If Putin finally abandons his halfway measures and gets down to a real war, well, the war there will be over soon, in a few days. However, if Washington can prevent the current government and Zelensky from surrendering until Ukraine is completely destroyed, well then Washington, the West, they get the benefit of the economic and financial drain on Russia that it will come with in order to, if Russia would have to rebuild Ukraine's infrastructure. So from Washington's standpoint, the more problems for Russia, the better, regardless of the cost to the Ukrainians. So what we are seeing, what we are witnessing is actually, it's an enormous inhumanity of the West. It is unjust because it is Ukraine, the Ukrainians, that are paying the cost of Western inhumanity, and it is not Washington, nor the European capitals, nor the residents. In fact, I actually believe if you would ask the people in the United States and the people in Europe, everyone would be for peace, talks, negotiations, return to the table. You see, it is really inconceivable to me that so-called experts and journalists and reporters, that they are so stupid and corrupt to have written ridiculous articles hiding the facts, the true facts of the conflict. You see, it is total nonsense. And it has encouraged the false narrative, the false belief that Russia can be defeated, and in fact that Ukraine can be in Crimea by Christmas, or perhaps even in the European Union by 2023. But it doesn't end there. You see, according to a recent poll conducted by the First Lady, also known as the Fashion Princess of Ukraine, according to this poll, 90% of the remaining Ukrainians in Ukraine, they'll be okay to suffer another 2 to 3 years in these new established hotspots, as long as they know that they will join the EU. I think nobody have told them that EU is not a charity. EU will not take a country with the size of Ukraine owing billions upon billions to the United States. No thank you. The EU have their own problems. However, this is the belief that is being fed. But my question is to the fashion princess, will she also live in a hotspot the next 2-3 years? Or will she be managing the war from the fashion room? I hope this video gave you some kind of valuable information or some insight or food for thought. I also have to say that this was not completely my narrative or my view of the situation. In fact, everything I said today was inspired by Paul Craig Roberts, who was working in a very high senior position for the Ronald Reagan administration. And he's very much against the war. So I wanted to kind of, put his view on the whole thing, and also let me know what you think. Thanks so much for watching, and I wish you all the best.